Chapter 321 Plan by Heidesgrain. While Jason and Emily were brought to the Golden Soul shop, he asked her multiple questions to figure out if she knew everything noteworthy about the tasks she had to do. It didn't take long for them to arrive and they got out of the shuttle, while Jason pondered about a few things. Emily is able to learn quite fast and it shouldn't be a problem to give her more responsibilities once the shop is more popular. If that's possible, I can work on myself without any issue. It's about time that I start forging low-grade 2 weapons either way, and it would be perfect to sell them inside the shop and online. Right now, Jason's biggest priority was strengthening his mana core rank and refining his body in order to strengthen his vessel. However, he also had to earn more funds because his masters told him so. They increased his monthly cultivation resources, which included medical solutions that had lots of nutrition in them, which was already a huge gain for him. Nevertheless, Jason was sure that he wasn't earning enough to pay for his own expenses at the moment, and that was bothersome. Either way, he could only take one step at a time. That was exactly what he was doing right now, and he was confident that it wouldn't take long for his shop to become popular. On one side he didn't have many goods, but on the other side, they were also not cheap, which would repulse poor customers. His shop was more focused on quality for every single good and quantity, which was good and bad at the same time. If he focused on both quality and quantity, his sales would probably skyrocket in a few days, but that was not something he had to care about now. Right as he was about to enter the shop, he saw a young man waiting in front of the door, impatiently. From his facial features, Jason could immediately tell that it was Silas Lower, whose profile picture he already saw. As such, he just entered the Golden Soul shop before asking his future employee to follow him. Silas, however, was astonished to hear Jason's voice behind the pitch-black mask which he put on before getting out of the shuttle. Jason's voice was that of a young man, or more likely even a teenager, which was not something Silas expected to hear. However, after trying to inspect his new employers, he had to acknowledge that the black-masked young man was not someone ordinary because he concealed his mana core completely. Not a tiny trace of mana fluctuations left his body, and one might even think that Jason was someone who never absorbed mana in his whole life. Shaking his head, Silas followed Jason quickly, only to enter a chilled room. Taking a look around while ignoring the temperature inside the room, Silas could tell that the shop might be new, but its potential was great. Alone the face that Jason cooled the room to prevent the exhibited potions from going bad was something inexperienced shops might forget when they first open. It was common sense, but some shop owners were still hopeless. Seeing that, Silas was sure that his new employer knew what he was doing when he saw the name tags and prices of all goods inside the shop. His eyes widened, but it was not because of the expensive prices, but rather the names written on the tags. 150,000 credits. Perfect purified jade iron bar. Subconsciously he just blurted out everything he read on the tags, which caused Jason to smile lightly behind his mask as he said, "I think you're fine with the common employment soul contract, right? Your salary is fixed on 30,000 credits per month, and the other clauses should already be clear. If not, you can read them once again. If you don't like to work for me anymore, the soul contract will remain, but slowly delete all clauses except the non-disclosure agreement in it, alright? Furthermore, you have to resign a month in advance. If that's not possible because of a serious injury or illness, the soul contract will immediately inform me. Other than that, there is nothing special, but I can promise you that there is a good chance of a bonus if you work hard and sell enough goods." Hearing what Jason said, Silas nodded his head without being able to think clearly as Jason loosened a thread from his soul to manifest the desired soul contract in front of him in a matter of seconds. When Silas saw this, he was astonished because his old employers required several minutes for something the black-masked youth could do in less than half a minute. Seeing that, he felt even more confident to have picked the right employer, and Silas signed the employment soul contract after reading through it 2 times. Once that was done, Silas took a deep breath before he regained his composure. In his whole life, He already signed multiple soul contracts and right now it was not as taxing as the first time. Jason took out a perfectly purified calming potion which he handed Silas, so that he could remain calm and at the same time soothe his soul world's toll. Accepting the potion thankfully, he only noticed how expensive the potion was after he finished gulping down every single drop inside it. That were 50,000 credits. The calming potion Jason gave his new employee was only a grade 1 potion, but after it was perfectly purified, its value and effectiveness were better than most normal grade 2 potions. After considering this, Jason thought that he was still extremely nice with his price because he could also double all prices inside his shop and still have enough customers. That was if they knew about the difficulties to create perfect purified goods. Nevertheless, his plan was something else for now. First, he didn't really want to scare away poorer customers who didn't know about his prices, but Jason knew that this would happen either way. As such, he genuinely hoped that news of a less than greater than would spread through the whole city. This would be perfect for his Golden Soul shop and an even better than the one he applied for online. With such rumors spreading, interested blacksmiths and probably even merchants would start looking out for his shop, only to figure out that the rumors were true. However, for them, it was not extremely expensive, but more likely a cheap price, considering that one could forge mana weapons with perfect purified bars. At least if one was able to create an alloy that was suitable to be forged into a mana weapon. Other than that, wealthy hunters and other slightly larger families might look out for the perfectly purified potions because they were extremely useful. Not only were they more effective than normal grade 1 potions, but being purified from all impurities also meant that one could gulp down several million potions without having any problems with one's mana circulation and absorption. This in particular was the biggest issue with normal, impure potions, and the reason why nobody really liked to purchase them, if it was not necessary. After drinking too many impure potions, the accumulated impurities would start to obstruct the mana absorption and circulation by a minuscule degree, which would only increase the more potions one had to use. In the end, this might even turn out as the reason to be unable to break through another mana core rank. If the Golden Soul shop became well known after the first week, he would start increasing the price by a small margin, otherwise, he would have to wait for another week. This wouldn't cause a commotion because he already had a sale label on his shop, telling everyone that his price wouldn't remain like it currently was forever. Chapter 322 Ranting by Hydesgrain. Jason was confident that his current plan was good enough to bring in a huge fortune. That was if he provided enough goods to sell. It was not even that he was too full of himself, but with his prices and the quality of his goods, it would be extremely weird if he would come out with a small profit or even a loss at the end of the month. There were only two things he had to take care of for now. Attract customers and prevent offending too many shops. Jason thought that the first one was not hard to come by as long as his shop's goods retained the good quality. Meanwhile, the second thing he had to pay attention to was not that easy to cope with because it was evident that he would offend a few shops in the long run. Some shops might not notice that anything was off in the beginning, but once the Golden Soul shop started to attract too much attention, customers would rather come to his shop than others. This would reduce other shops' profits drastically, and Jason was sure that some of them would try to slander him in any possible way. However, that was bound to happen and Jason didn't really bother about it for now. Instead, he would rather focus on the most important things for now, gathering popularity. It was already 8 a.m. when Jason finished explaining everything important to Emily and Silas, who eyed the prices for everything in awe and shock before their attention was drawn to Jason. After he told them that the expensive prices they saw were already discounted and thus on sale, both couldn't contain themselves anymore and exclaimed in astonishment. However, after that was done, Jason took out his exclusive items, consisting of several dozen pseudo-mana grade 1 weapons and one mana grade 1 jadeite longsword. If one were to look closer at the weapons, it wouldn't be difficult to come to the conclusion that each weapon was made by one blacksmith, as every single one of them had the same flaws in them. These flaws were minuscule, and one could tell that every weapon was slightly better than the one before because there were fewer flaws in them. The last 4 pseudo-mana grade 1 weapons were infinitely close to real mana grade 1 weapons, and it was only because of a small fluke in the forging process that they were still considered pseudo-mana weapons. Nevertheless, their price was still much higher than the pseudo-mana grade 1 dagger set Jason forged on his first try to make mana grade 1 weapons. In the end, all weapons he forged used perfectly purified bars which increased their mana circulation and ignited the material's full potential. This prevented them from breaking too fast and becoming dull. As such, Shane's mana grade 1 longsword was worth 4 million credits, which was comparable to the price of a well-forged high grade 2 weapon. Yet, its price was still the average for common mana grade 1 weapons. Exhibiting the sword as his main attraction, Jason was sure that a few blacksmiths that might pass his shop would notice its value and start questioning who forged it. These blacksmiths would either ask about the person who forged it to figure out the blacksmith's secret to create a mana grade 1 weapon without a single flaw in its mana conductivity, or they would try to see if it was possible to lure such a blacksmith to their side. There were many blacksmiths trying to oppose the Artisan Tower due to multiple reasons, but the biggest obstacle against a riot against the Artisan Tower were their connections and the number of prodigies they had under them. Once Jason was done, he looked at Emily and Silas, whose eyes were shining brightly, which caused him to grin as he said, "You two don't have to be too euphoric right now. We don't even have customers yet. To be honest, I doubt that anything special will happen today. Just take it easy. Absorb mana or practice the Heaven's Hell technique until a customer comes in. I don't think that they will remain inside the shop for long, and they might even curse us about the prices. But please remember to remain kind and courteous. If my estimation is not wrong, in around 4 days, the first few real customers might come by." Hearing this, Emily and Silas looked at him in confusion, not knowing what exactly he tried to imply. Only 3 days later, the two finally understood what Jason meant with his words. There were many people who were interested in the Golden Soul shop when it opened, but almost all of them cursed Jason, Emily, and Silas for being greedy or insane. This was because they put such high prices for potions and forged bars one could normally purchase for 1/10 of the Golden Soul shop's price. Even the pseudo-magic weapons and mana weapons price were too high according to these wise citizens who labeled Jason as fraud. Some of them even said that they would report him to the government. Hearing this, Jason couldn't help but smile brightly behind his mask, because these wise citizens were nothing but pushovers after he released his killing intent before saying, "If Sir doesn't plan to purchase anything and has the intention to rant or curse me, Sir might as well leave my shop now." Most citizens were astonished about him releasing killing intent, only because they were cursing a little bit inside his shop. However, even after they heard that he asked them to leave, some citizens were reluctant and continued to curse about his exorbitant prices. Using his physical strength of a second master rank, he picked these pushovers who were not proficient in fighting but also at the master rank. Showing his strength and decisiveness from the beginning, everyone understood that the Golden Soul shop was not something they could take on just like that. Their mana core rank might be on par with Jason's, but the citizen were not completely stupid and understood that Jason had a high combat awareness. Instead of actively cursing him, after getting to know how Jason acted with his dear customers, most of them complained about his shop to the government. After these wise citizens which Jason threw out exaggerated the facts about the Golden Soul shop to the government, they immediately sent someone over to take a proper look. Jason, who was astonished that the citizens acted like that after ranting inside his shop, couldn't help but shrug his shoulders when he saw a middle-aged man with short-cut black hair and a short beard walking inside the shop. The man wore the government's standardized uniforms, which the Jewel family gave every single government worker according to their rank, with emblems embedded on it according to their specialization. Seeing the emblem of a hammer striking on an anvil with 4 stars below, Jason couldn't help but think that the frustrating citizens played into his hands. This emblem meant that the middle-aged man in front of him was an advanced blacksmith, commonly known as Rank 4 blacksmith. This will be easier than I previously thought. Jason thought confidently as he saw that the government worker looked around his shop, without saying anything. He didn't even greet Jason as the owner and just inspected everything clearly. When Emily and Silas saw the government worker, they were astonished and became nervous. After calming them down with reassuring words, Jason decided that it was time to approach the middle-aged man, who noticed him. "Hello sir, how can I help you? Are you searching for something specific or just looking around?" Trying to figure out Jason's Manticore rank, the middle-aged man was astonished to sense that he couldn't see through it at all. He was already at the Magus rank and still couldn't see through the black-masked man with a youthful voice. Smiling lightly, the middle-aged man decided to disregard the citizens' complaints that were obviously exaggerated and faulty as he introduced himself. "Hello, I'm Berg Bray and I came here to investigate the Golden Soul Shop to figure out if it will tarnish our city's reputation. However, after seeing the goods prices, I can say for sure that they're definitely not shady or too expensive like reported. I can tell that they're perfectly purified, which is not something one can find often in our small B-grade city. Rather than continuing a baseless investigation, I would like to purchase 100x perfect purified jade iron bars and 50x energy replenishing potions. If that's possible. Even as a rank 4 blacksmith, I'm still unable to perfectly purify grade 1 jade iron bars to such an extent. Maybe I can learn something from that and further improve my capabilities. Even if I can't comprehend anything out of it, I might as well use them myself to forge a weapon and make a huge profit or give it to my disciple." Jason just nodded his head as he said with a faint smile on his face. "That would be 17,500,000 credits. Thanks for being our first big customer and I apologize for creating such a ruckus." Chapter 323 Miraculous Medicine by Hydesgrain. First big customer. There hasn't been anyone, yet. Berg asked, wondering how that was even possible as he transferred 17.5 million credits to Jason's bank account that was connected to his quantum bracelet. The person who invented quantum bracelets ensured that nobody could hack the bank accounts that were created when a new quantum bracelet was manufactured. One can only look into someone else's bank account by having the owner's permission or forcefully taking away the owner's quantum bracelet. However, with the latter option, it was not possible to transfer credits from one account to another because the owner's unique mana fluctuations are required to transfer credits. Adding multiple owners was possible, but it would require the very first person to authorize everything. When Jason heard Berg Bray's question, he couldn't help but grin behind his mask before he honestly answered. "Yes, sir is my first big customer. There were other lower-ranked blacksmiths, but upon hearing the citizens outside talking bad about me, they probably didn't dare to enter the shop. Maybe they feared to be conned by me or that the citizens averted the useless hate or whatever it is that they have against the Golden Soul Shop towards them. They're probably laughing right now, thinking that Sir will arrest me for whatever reason. I don't even think that they even questioned if my prices were justified or not. Maybe they have anger management issues or seek a pushover they can blame for something bad." Right now, Jason tried to build up amity with the government worker to figure out more about the city's problems because he noticed that the citizens behaved very odd. It was normal for poor people to be jealous of the rich, which also included shops daring to exhibit expensive items, but from what he saw, the citizens' behavior was over the top. Some of them stood already for 3 days in front of his shop, only to disappear when the shop closed. The next morning, they were already there, waiting for him and his employees to arrive before the shop opened. Jason was not sure what was going on, but he had the premonition that someone had his hands in this mess, whether it was someone ordering the citizen to stir trouble. There was also the possibility that these citizens searched for someone they could release their stress on because something bothered them within the city. However, he was not sure what could cause such a ruckus. Seeing how Berg flinched for a quarter of a second, Jason knew that he was on the right way, which was neither good nor bad. Clearing his throat, Berg said as a big sweat pearl run down his temples. I'll take care of this problem. Once the government clarifies that your shop is legitimate and without any improper goods or prices, there shouldn't be more issues. I'll also tell the Artisan Tower and Hunter Association that I found a shop selling perfectly purified grade 1 bar, potions, and mana weapons. I hope that is enough to show the government's sincerity. If Jason didn't wear his mask right now, everyone looking at him would see his furrowed eyebrows. His expression didn't look good either, after he heard what the government worker said. Nevertheless, Jason nodded his head. Without further ado, Berg bid Jason farewell after he received his goods, before reassuring him again that he will take care of the matter. Walking back to Emily and Silas, who were nervously waiting for him to say something, Jason couldn't help but ask himself quietly. Is it normal for the government to act so courteous when someone complains about the citizens' behavior? What matter? Holding back the citizens who seemed to have started a siege on my shop. Emily and Silas both heard what Jason mumbled to himself, and Emily could only helplessly look at him because she didn't know anything about the real world, as she was always nearby the orphanage, absorbing mana. However, Silas answered the question Jason asked after hesitating for a moment. I don't know why the citizens in front of the Golden Soul shop seem to target you or the shop itself, but it hasn't been that long since many things changed within the city. I'm not sure if that's what you mean, sir, but there are a bunch of rumors going around the city. They might be exaggerated or even wrong, but maybe they can help you. Turning to Silas, Jason indicated him to speak, which he did after a short moment to decide where to start. I heard from 3 rumors around the city quite often, but I can't say if one of them is true or if all of them are wrong because every single rumor seems weird. The first rumor is about the slave market and says that the Jewel clan allied with foreign races to experiment with us, poor citizens, to make them stronger. Apparently, Mankind's ability to contract beasts is unique to our race, and other races want to create a being that has the foreign race's strength and mana aptitude and humans' unique ability to bind beasts and receive an amplification in strength. However, I doubt that this is the case, otherwise, we would have noticed something odd, right? I have never seen someone from a foreign race either. It's hard to believe that this could be true. The second rumor says something about citizens being kidnapped, only to return after several days. After returning, they're said to have turned into completely different individuals, and from what I saw, these citizens looked like they were addicted to drugs. This is more likely because Terebrine had lots of problems with drugs over the last few decades. At least that is what my parents told me. The third rumor I heard from citizens is that the Jewel clan created a powerful potion or medicine, which allows the consumer to enhance his or her mana attitude for a certain period. Apparently, this miraculous medicine, how most citizens name it, cannot be found on the market, and only the government or slave market distributes it. To be honest, I'm not sure whether this rumor is true or not because I heard about it only a few times, and all of these citizens were former drug addicts. Unfortunately, I don't know more about these rumors, otherwise, I would tell you more. Maybe one of them is true and the citizens have a reason to act like they're currently doing. Carefully listening to Silas' words, Jason pondered for a moment, trying to figure out what these rumors could mean and if there was truth behind them when he heard Emily mumbling. Didn't the slave merchants say something from test objects? Hearing this, Jason's mind was rattling, trying to figure out what exactly was going on with the city and maybe even the whole island, Terebrine. However, in the end, all clues came to one conclusion. The Jewel clan is also messing with the island they're governing. If there are so many rumors going around, all of them could be true. At least to a certain extent. If that's the case, the Jewel clan is allying with a foreign race, experimenting with humans, trying to find a way to create the most powerful humans. The miraculous medicine, or how it's called, might as well be something from the foreign race the Jewel clan is allied with. If that's the case, the drug-addicted citizens that were could have something to do with the experiments about the miraculous medicine, which could also be a drug. Jason entered his own world of thoughts, and with each minute passing, the possibilities turned only worse, which was definitely not good. Even the best possible outcome was extremely bad in his opinion, and mankind seemed to be even messier than he initially thought, if that was even the case. Why didn't Shane and Dahlia retreat to a nicer island which is governed by one of the kinda big families? He thought for a moment before disregarding this idea, because it was obvious where the Drake clan would search for Shane and Dahlia's whereabouts first. Hiding in the enemy's territory seemed to work out the best, and his masters could even live above the surface right now without the need to hide below a lake. This was great, but at the same time, Jason couldn't help but feel that everything was only becoming worse the more time passed. Retaining his senses, he looked at Emily and Silas, who waited for him to do anything as he said, "Let's go back to work, we should get more customers soon." His two employees were disappointed that he told them what he thought about the rumors. However, there was nothing they could do except doing as he ordered. Going back to work, they first refilled the shelves where Jason took out the goods for Berg's large purchase. Chapter 324, Acting as Ears by Hydesgrain. Only a few hours after Berg left the Golden Soul shop, a few more low-ranked blacksmiths came and purchased a bunch of perfectly purified Grade 1 bar. A short while later, young hunters entered his shop, taking a look at the perfectly purified potions. After inspecting them thoroughly, they purchased a small variety of potions before leaving, without saying much. However, Jason felt weird when he looked at some of them because of their jittery movements. From the young hunters' facial expressions, they seemed to look serious and like common customers, but Jason's mana eyes perceived that their mana veins and mana core were craving for something. At least that was how he interpreted what he saw. This was weird, but it was hardly possible to walk up to them and ask about what he saw. Once it was evening, Jason closed the shop and Silas went on his own way, while he and Emily called a shuttle. Under normal circumstances, he would manifest Artemis wings on his back and everything would be fine. However, after she heard that Jason had to carry Emily, Artemis rejected his request to enter the mana core so that he could manifest her wings. This forced Jason to either run home or use the shuttle. Why are my soul bonds so different to everyone except me? He asked himself, wondering if others forced their soul bonds to behave them or if they innately listened to their master's words. Either way, his soul bonds were not only clingy and indigent but also easily annoyed by small things and acted however they wanted to, which frustrated Jason. Furthermore, they seemed to like holding a grudge, which he noticed after they returned from the abandoned lands. Inside the shuttle, Jason decided to ask what Emily thought about the rumors. Unfortunately, she didn't know what to say, and the only thing she said was what she heard from the slave merchant she escaped. Other than that, she didn't say much. Emily thought she would say something wrong, otherwise, which she wanted to prevent. Sighing deeply at her reluctance, Jason was unsure what he would do with Emily if she were to act the same with customers, which was fortunately not the case. When it came to customers, she could explain everything well, and Jason was astonished how much she learned during a single weekend because her attitude, acting, and explanations were perfect. Well, it doesn't really matter if she has no opinion about it. Nevertheless, I should inform Shane and Dahlia what might be going on in Terebrine. Not even half an hour later, the shuttle arrived in front of their house, which they entered without further ado. Inside the house, they smelled a delicious fragrance permeating the air, telling them that someone, most likely Dahlia, cooked dinner. Walking towards the dining room, they saw that everything was already prepared, while Shane was sitting in front of the dining table, waiting patiently. Seeing them, he smiled lightly, saying that Dahlia was almost done with her preparations. Only a few minutes later everything was set and they started to eat dinner while Emily explained what happened today. Hearing that the same citizens as the day before came to siege upon the Golden Soul shop, Shane and Dahlia furrowed their brows only to see Jason eating dinner in a relaxed manner like it had nothing to do with him. Once Emily finished with her short explanation, they couldn't help but look over to Jason, who they wanted to explain everything more clearly. Emily's story was short and she didn't really go into the necessary details to figure out what really happened, which was different from Jason's explanations as he liked to go into details. Seeing their confused expressions, Jason just said, "I'll explain everything later, but there might be a highly addictive cultivation drug on Terebrine, made by foreign races or something similar." After he said so, he continued to eat, satiating his hunger which frustrated his masters. Half an hour later, when everyone was done, he explained everything more thoroughly without letting out any important information. The rumors were not important for either of them to conclude that something was wrong. Suspicious was the way some citizens acted, the government worker attitude, and Hunter's behavior. Combining the facts, it was almost impossible to deny that either one of the known rumors was true or that all rumors told the truth to a certain extent. Instead of being overly shocked, Shane and Dahlia's mood just plummeted and Jason could understand them somewhat. Everything that happened on Asterix Island over the last few months was already shocking and disgusting in their opinion, but it seemed as if they were pursued by misfortune. After looking at Emily for a short moment, Shane said, "If the addictive cultivation drug really exists, the slave market's importance is many times higher than we thought. The chance that they want to build a huge army of powerful, addicted slaves would be extremely high. This is even worse than the Drake clan's doing." Jason, who didn't think that far yet because he was still asking himself if his assumption with the cultivation drug was really true, couldn't help but nod his head. After that, the dining room turned silent, and only when Dahlia said something several minutes later, the weird atmosphere filling the room began to dissipate. "Jason, Emily. Don't try to involve yourselves in the slave market or with anyone who might have something to do with the cultivation drug. That is if it really exists. Even if it doesn't exist, please don't create too much trouble. The two of you are still too weak to do anything against anyone powerful." Averting her attention to Emily, she just said, "You just formed your first soul bond and it will take a long time before you're strong enough to adjust to a guardian-ranked beast's shared strength. Furthermore, it's your first soul bond and your mana core is barely at the lower expert rank." Turning to Jason after she finished lecturing Emily, who stared at Dahlia confused, Dahlia seriously said, "Don't bother about any possible drugs, addictive medicines, the slave market or anything like that, alright? Try to focus on yourself. Once you're strong enough you can change everything you don't like. At least if you feel like it. But that's not something you should be concerned about for now." Jason was already aware of that and just nodded his head, knowing that Dahlia was concerned about him and how he might act once he figured out more. "I don't plan on doing anything, but I told Emily and my other employee Silas that they should tell me every rumor they're hearing inside the Golden Soul shop. That shouldn't be too much, right?" Sighing, Dahlia just agreed without bothering to say anything against Jason anymore. She could only look at Shane with a helpless expression. However, Shane was not really helpful because his eyes gleamed brightly at Jason's words when he said with enthusiasm, "If you told your employees to act as your ears, that means you plan on leaving the shop to them from now on, right? Should we continue our forging training?" When Dahlia heard this, she just slapped her own forehead out of a reflex, while Emily looked at Shane in astonishment. "He is just like a small child." Jason meanwhile, smiled as he said, "I have to forge lots of perfectly purified grade 1 bars for now. Afterwards, I want to exhibit perfectly purified grade 2 bars from various ores. As such it would be perfect if we could deepen my foundation and advance to the next step. Additionally, I want to forge grade 2 weapons." Turning towards Dahlia, he also added with a smile on his lips, "I also want to learn how to mass-produce grade 1 potions before I want to concoct complexer grade 2 potions." Chapter 325 Fleeing from his wife by Hydesgrain. Instead of taking care of the shop, where he could only absorb mana when nobody required his help, Jason had more things to take care of. One was that he couldn't let his stockpile of goods decrease. He had to refill them. Without being able to do that, he might have a scarcity of goods sooner than he estimated. As such, Jason decided to end the sale once the new week started. The exhibited weapons were never on sale and he only had to increase the price for the perfectly purified goods. His perfectly purified grade 1 bars were now priced at 250,000 credits while he doubled the price for peak grade 1 potions to 100,000 credits. With this increment, only stronger hunters or rich heirs inside the B-grade city would enter his shop and purchase something. However, that was what he planned since the beginning. As such, it was better if he increased the price as soon as possible before someone became too accustomed to the old prices. With that in mind, the week passed, without anything serious happening. His shop's sales on Friday increased and Jason sold several hundred unblemished ranked beast corpses for 20 million credits too. After that, he started to forge perfect purified grade 1 bars at an extremely fast pace, which he could only do thanks to his strengthened Black Origin flame and high proficiency he attained after doing the exact same procedure for several months. While forging, he was also passively absorbing mana, while the sub-area inside his mind was doing the same. Jason was glad to have been able to split his mind into the main area and one sub-area because it helped him a lot, even if it was a painful memory lingering in his mind. However, there was no gain without pain in the cultivation world because almost everything hurt somehow. Practicing the Heaven's Hell technique was painful and under normal circumstances, the same applied for body refining. Fortunately enough, he had the Black Origin flame which helped him to soothe pain instead of spreading pain through his whole body during the body refining process. This made Jason happy and he was thankful to have obtained such a unique treasure, without much effort. During the weekend, Shane brought him to the abandoned lands once again, where Artemis and Scorpio were told to hunt other beasts without sustaining injuries. While his two soulbonds were following his instructions and slowly improving their combat experience, Jason took out his portable forge from the spatial ring after he found a good position to set up his open forging place. Shane decided to remain next to Jason to take a look at his forging process and at the same time to prevent other beasts or other things to distract him from forging. Creating perfectly purified grade 2 bars was not easy and being distracted during the process was not great as it might be the cause for the bar's mana veins to get damaged. But that was not Shane's sole reason to follow Jason in the abandoned lands. Not only did he want to see his disciples' progress and how to help him to improve in a matter of a few days. He also wanted to escape from Dahlia, who started to spoil Emily with cultivation resources. Dahlia began to teach Emily about all kinds of things that she didn't know before too. The orphanage neglected the duty and didn't taught the orphans very well. Escaping from the two women, Shane was glad to be with Jason, whom he could teach in his rough manner without the need to bear Dahlia's complaints later. In the end, Jason was sure that he didn't need Shane for the current procedures he was doing, but Jason also felt pity for him, even if he was not sure why exactly. Nevertheless, he only perfectly purified the grade 2 ores that were the most common and easiest to shape and purify with his Black Origin flame. As such, there was no need for Shane to explain everything to him and he would only need his help in the weapon forging process. After forging his first mana weapon, Jason thought a lot about what he could improve, and with Shane's help he finished 3 more mana weapons until the weekend was over. Other than forging, he also practiced the Heaven's Hell technique at least once a day, absorbed mana, and refined his physique. In his breaks, he searched and gathered the carcasses of several hundred beasts which Artemis and Scorpio killed, only to notice that there were still not many mid-unblemished ranked beasts among them. However, compared to a week before, his two soulbonds didn't sustain any serious injuries and there were only a few shallow cuts that already stopped bleeding. Thus, Jason couldn't be dissatisfied with the result as he caressed Artemis and Scorpio after all corpses were stored inside his spatial ring. In the beginning, Jason asked himself if someone would notice that he was hunting beasts inside the abandoned lands, but Shane only said that the abandoned lands were at least a quarter of the whole island and that there were beasts in abundance. Nobody would even notice that so many beasts died in a few days. The only good thing about the abandoned lands was that they was a border between the beast-human territory, if one were to call either of them like that. Humans couldn't live in the abandoned lands while most beasts were able to survive there. For them, it was probably even more dangerous to live close to cities than inside the abandoned lands. As such, Jason could only nod his head and think that the rules of the jungle applied in the abandoned lands. He felt like a hypocrite as he thought about the earth dragons right now, but there was something substantially different in his mind. His mindset told him that it was fine to hunt beasts openly in order to defend himself or even to make a profit out of it. On the other side, he felt that torturing beasts were something entirely different. It was just cruel and unnecessary. Either one subdued or killed a beast to obtain something, but torturing needlessly felt wrong to Jason. He knew that others called him a gullible, stupid hypocrite, but that was not something he bothered about after witnessing how placid wild beasts like the tornado wolf mother and earth dragons could be. This might be because of his benevolent and kind aura which he released according to the earth dragon mother's transmitted memories, but that was exactly why Jason acted slightly differently to beasts than other humans. Shaking his head, Jason regained his composure before he continued to listen to Shane's short lecture about things he could improve after they arrived at home again. Shane didn't even bother to search for Dahlia because he was sure that she was with Emily, and both he and Jason just sat down on the couch, while Scorpio laid next to them, sleeping, with Artemis on his head barely able to stay awake. The last 2 days were even more exhausting than a week before because they had to use all their means to fight other beasts. Driven by the desire to become stronger which they inherited from Jason through the fortified soul conjunction, both gave their best without holding back anymore. Now that it was Sunday, late in the night, their remaining energy hit rock bottom and the only thing they wanted to do was to sleep. Jason was still fully awake, and carefully listening to Shane's words that seemed to sound more serious than they normally did. I'm not sure if you felt uncomfortable inside the abandoned lands or if there was something else bothering you, but your control over the Black Origin flame was not stable, and sometimes it felt like you might even lose control over your flame. Chapter 326 Churn Soul Energy by Hydesgrain. After carefully listening to Shane, who lectured him, Jason could only nod his head because he could feel that problems with his Black Origin flame occurred. I'm also unsure what is going on with my Black Origin flame, but I can say for sure that it has nothing to do with me being uncomfortable inside the abandoned lands or something like that. Rather than that, I felt like my Black Origin flame was revolting against itself, which is weird. I can tell that something about it will change soon, but I can't say for sure what exactly it will be. It might be that the Black Origin flame is about to meet one criterion for its evolution into a Tier 1 Origin flame, but I'm not sure about that. Taking a deep breath, Jason pondered what else could be the reason for his Black Origin flame behaving weirdly. However, instead of making assumptions, he wanted to figure out the real reason, which shouldn't be much of a challenge. Shane only noticed that Jason entered his soul world when a faint golden hue began to envelop his head, which was Jason's individual indicator that he entered his soul world. As such, he thought that his disciple was trying to get to know his flame's issues, which was a good start. An origin flame was different from a normal flame because it not only had unique abilities but could also become stronger and grow as long as it was able to annex more soul energy. Other than that, Dahlia had explained to Shane that origin flames would become sentient at a certain point and that every single one of them had an individual personality and unique character traits. Unfortunately, Shane didn't have an origin flame and couldn't really understand how a flame could be sentient and what it might feel like to have a flame with an individual personality, which sounded ridiculous on his head. In that case, aren't origin flames just unique elemental beings? Thinking about that, he was not even sure how different fire elemental beings were compared to origin flames, because both were sentient. The biggest difference of an origin flame was most likely its unique abilities and special function to act as a soul bond with limitless potential. As such, Shane started to see an origin flame as something similar to a superior elemental being without knowing if that was right or wrong. Inside his soul world, Jason was instantly greeted by a warm heat wave coming from the center, where his origin flame was situated. Approaching the center, he could see how thick his soul connection with the black origin flame became. Standing before it, Jason noticed that it floated towards him in its slow play to play around, seeking his attention. This felt like a déjà vu, and Jason asked himself if it learned that from Artemis and Scorpio. However, before he could think more about his black origin flame's behavior, Jason noticed something which excited him. Unknowingly, the black origin flame started to construct a fortified soul conjunction that looked extremely crude and unstable. Nevertheless, the fortified soul conjunction was already a good starting point for him to start with his investigation, as it was the most likely reason for his black origin flame to act weirdly. Compared to the long gaseous thread that represents his soul connection with the origin flame, the fortified soul conjunction was minuscule in size and not even 1/100th of their soul connection's whole length. This was rather uncommon because a fortified soul conjunction was commonly known for evenly spreading along or around the soul connection. Jason thought that it was probably something unique to origin flames and decided that he would ask Dalia if there was something he couldn't understand. However, after the vigorous black flames bumped into him inside his soul world, he suddenly started to understand what it desired and for what reason. You need soul energy to establish a fortified soul connection with me. Is that why the first try failed and looks like this? Jason asked in astonishment. Carefully looking at his origin flame, he felt like his words were exactly what it wanted to tell him. As such, he just said, "You are allowed to annex soul energy from me, but not every vacant soul energy unit within me. Use only what you need, nothing more. I still have to increase my soul energy for other purposes, and we don't want to work counterproductive, right?" Hearing what Jason said, the black origin flame flickered overjoyed before it floated back to the center of his soul world, where the soul world core and expelled soul energy was situated. Without any hesitation, it absorbed 200 soul energy units, which it burned within its flame, decreasing his total amount of soul energy by 200 units as if they never existed. Seeing that his soul energy decreased from 16,000 units to 15,800 units, Jason couldn't help but feel a sting in his heart, because these 200 soul energy units were his hard work for one day. Sighing deeply, he hoped that it was worth the effort, only to notice that the black origin flame began to work on their fortified soul conjunction. The crude and unstable part was already about to be reconstructed, which was extremely interesting, and the only thing he began to ask himself was about how much soul energy units establishing the fortified soul conjunction required. However, this was not something he could estimate just like that, because he didn't know how long his 200 soul energy units could be used for. Waiting for his black origin soul to finish the first part was also not something Jason wanted to do, as it might take a long time. It already took almost 3 days to construct the unstable and crude fortified soul conjunction. Thus, Jason decided that it was not necessary to figure out how much soul energy it would cost to complete the fortified soul conjunction, as long as he had enough soul energy. Leaving the soul world after taking one more glance at his hard-working origin flame, Jason started to explain everything to his master, who could only look at him with squinted eyes, not knowing whether to celebrate or beat him up. To put it simply, your origin flame tried to establish a fortified soul conjunction but couldn't absorb and burn your soul energy to create a proper one. Through this, your control over the black origin flame was slacking off during the last few days. Now that you allowed it to absorb your soul energy, it started to work again. Once it is done, you will have your third fortified soul conjunction. Nodding his head without any meaning, Jason also blurted out, "I also feel like creating the fortified soul conjunction could solve my problem with the black origin flame's evolution." Taking a deep breath, Shane felt the desire to beat up Jason. Only the thought about Dalia's shocked expression could calm him down as he awaited her reaction. Is there something special about him that attracts his soul bonds? Even the black origin flame wants to form a fortified soul conjunction with him. It had only been a few months after Jason contracted it. Dahlia will hate that. Chapter 327 shared by Hydesgrain. Without further ado, Shane picked up Jason to look out for Dahlia, who should be somewhere in the house with Emily because it was already late at night. Looking through all the rooms in his small house, he was still unable to find her, which caused him to wonder where his wife went when Jason said that both were outside, lying on a chair, not doing anything at all. Seeing this through his mana eyes, Jason couldn't help but feel as if both Dahlia and Emily were enjoying their free time while he and Shane were working hard. This caused his overjoyed mood to plummet by a small margin because he hoped that Emily would be as hardworking as he was. However, Jason only thought so because of his own selfishness, as the thought-build a faction in the future was apparent in his mind. He felt that Emily was the perfect first member because of several reasons. Not only is her mana aptitude high, but her first soul bond was a guardian-ranked beast. As such, he couldn't help but feel a little bit bitter for a short while before he told himself that they were only recuperating after working hard. At least Jason tried to convince himself that it had been like this. Shane was still carrying around Jason in one hand, which was weird, and only when they left the house did Shane put him down. Artemis followed them by flying behind both while Scorpio returned to the Soul World only to appear next to Jason, outside the house. Dahlia and Emily noticed him already some time ago, and Emily wanted to greet them, only for Dahlia to hold her back, saying that everything was fine and that they would come over once they were done. As such, they waited patiently for more than half an hour, which was much longer than Dahlia expected. However, once Shane and Jason appeared outside, both Dahlia and Emily could see Shane's satisfied expression and Jason looking at them as if he was about to ask, "Are you two in a vacation resort?" The latter didn't really bother Dahlia much, and she only smiled gently at Jason. Worse was Shane's satisfied expression, because that was exactly the same expression he had on his face when he was about to tell her something shocking. This caused Dahlia's gentle smile to stiffen, while Emily sat up hurriedly. She was about to stand up when Shane said that it was not necessary and that she should just stay seated if she didn't want to stand around awkwardly. Emily was still not sure how to behave in front of Shane, and he was aware of that because he felt similar. As such, it was better for either of them to prevent acting awkwardly with each other. Reverting his attention back to Dahlia, his smile widened when he began to explain everything about Jason's situation to Dahlia. After he finished his short summary, Dahlia couldn't help but blink several times. "Huh?" she blurted out subconsciously before Dahlia shot up from the chair after she realized what Shane said. "What?" Averting her gaze to Jason, who couldn't help but smile innocently as if the whole conversation had nothing to do with him, Dahlia felt the desire to beat her disciple up igniting from deep within her. "So you want to tell me that your Black Origin Flame is about to construct a fortified soul conjunction, and that this might as well be one of the criteria for it to evolve?" Taking a few deep breaths to calm down, she cleared her mind before saying, "So, you want to tell me that your origin flame requires a fortified soul conjunction for its first evolution?" Dahlia was unsure what hurt her more, that Jason was about to establish a fortified soul conjunction with his origin flame, which she couldn't even do after more than a century, or that his black origin flame required a fortified soul conjunction to evolve. Slumping back on the lounge as she lied on before, Dahlia sighed deeply before glaring at Shane. "That's why I hate seeing you with this expression." Smiling innocently, Shane tried to act as if he didn't know what was going on, when Dahlia decided to ignore him to look at Jason once again. "Do you have enough soul energy, or is it necessary for you to adjust your schedule to practice the Heaven's Hell technique more often again?" This was a question Jason also asked himself, and he was not sure what exactly the answer was. Right now he had almost 10,000 vacant soul energy units, but Jason couldn't say how many soul energy units the construction of the fortified soul conjunction would require. Furthermore, he was also unsure if the Black Origin Flame was able to utilize more soul energy in one day than he could regenerate. As such, he just said, "I should have more than enough soul energy units. I can take care of my schedule myself, but I think you should be more worried about Emily rather than me." She contracted a Guardian-ranked beast which required at least 10,000 soul energy. If I'm not wrong, the emerald-colored egg will turn into a mid-Guardian-ranked beast, if not something stronger. Hearing this, Emily flinched, only to look at Jason with pain in her eyes as she said, I already practiced the Heaven's Hell technique 3 times in 2 days. It hurts so much and I can't do more than that either way. Her soul world's soul energy replenishing process is faster than the average, that's good. Jason just thought before he smiled at Emily, saying, That's good then, once it hatches you should treat your soul bond as if it's your own child. That's a precaution for the possibility that your soul energy is not high enough once it reached maturity. After he said so, Jason excused himself before he entered the house again. Once he entered his room, he couldn't help but take a few deep breaths as he clenched his teeth. Why is it so damn painful? He asked himself, holding his chest, knowing that the reason for it was his origin flame establishing the fortified soul conjunction with him. He never expected that this procedure could hurt him so much when Artemis and Scorpio emerged next to him. Approaching him, they touched him faintly before Jason noticed that the pain was drastically reduced by almost 2/3. Not only could he take on his soul bond's pain because of his fortified soul conjunction with both Artemis and Scorpio, but it also worked the other way around, which they demonstrated to him. Artemis took his pain and Scorpio did the same, which allowed Jason to breathe much easier. Thanking his soul bonds, Jason caressed them for a while before he practiced the Heaven's Hell technique. After that, he absorbed mana for a few hours before it was all ready for Emily to return to the shop. Giving her the goods he produced during the last week, she nodded her head. Emily also asked him if she could go absorb mana in the back room if there weren't too many customers, which Jason accepted. He already hinted several times that she should focus on her mana core rank and soul energy for now before anything else. As such, Jason couldn't help but feel glad when she asked him that question, which indicated to him that she was starting to understand what she had to take care of. Chapter 328 Pandemonium by Hydesgrain. 2 weeks passed since the Black Origin Flame started to establish the fortified soul conjunction with him, and it used up around 6,000 soul energy units to finish this project, which caused almost unbearable pain. Jason's body was burning from the insides every single day, at least it felt like that to him, even if he knew that it was phantom pain transmitted from the burned soul energy and the construction of the fortified soul conjunction. He never heard of a beast or sentient being that burned soul energy to do something like that, which felt weird to Jason. However, more astonishing was that establishing the fortified soul conjunction took the Black Origin Flame only 2 weeks and 6,000 soul energy units, which was the amount his 3 soul bonds required, together. It was sad to see that his hard work was burned, but it had a use which was more important. As such, Jason was still satisfied, even if his soul energy decreased to 13,500 units after the 2 weeks passed. In his opinion, was his effort definitely worth the benefits he would obtain through the fortified soul conjunction. With that in mind, there was no way for him to feel disappointed or even frustrated with his decreased soul energy units. Shortly before the fortified soul conjunction was established, Jason broke into the 3rd expert rank, enlarging his vessel by a small margin. At the same time, it decreased the negligible amount of pain his soul bond's amplified strength caused. During the last 2 weeks, he couldn't feel the pain of his vessel that was at its limits because the Black Origin Flame made a mess with his soul world and mind. However, it was still better to be careful about every possibility. Only thanks to Artemis and Scorpio that transferred a majority of his pain to themselves, could Jason get the hang of himself and focus on his other tasks, which were absorbing mana, refining his body, forging, and concocting potions en masse. Forging bars and concocting potions was fortunately not restricted due to the construction of the fortified soul conjunction, which would have been quite bad because his shop was making huge profits. There was not even a change after he increased the prices, as they were still considered fair. If a blacksmith forged a single pseudo-mana grade 1 weapon out of a perfectly purified jade iron bar for 250,000 credits, one could make a profit of more than 250,000 credits. This included only blacksmiths that could barely forge pseudo-mana weapons and not veteran blacksmiths. Veteran blacksmiths were able to rake a huge profit from his cheap goods. Purchasing a perfectly purified comatite bar in addition to the jade iron bar, one was able to make jadeite, which could be used to forge a mana weapon. A mana weapon that was forged by a proper blacksmith could be sold with a 10-fold profit compared to the price the Golden Soul shop demanded for purified bars. Blacksmiths wouldn't have to bother about perfectly purifying ores, which was the most difficult to do perfectly. It was not much of a problem to purify ores up to 80%, but above that, it became more difficult and time-consuming. The latter was also the reason for most blacksmiths to pick more expensive ores that didn't have to be purified to forge a mana weapon. As such, many blacksmiths demanded his goods, while the same applied for hunters, influential families, clans, and merchants who wanted to purchase not only his perfectly purified bars but also potions to use them for themselves or sell them to other cities. Once Jason found this out, he made an announcement limiting the purchasable number of goods for a single person to a certain number to prevent this. This caused a small commotion, but after he said that he might as well increase the prices, everything quieted down. He had already issues providing enough grade 1 potions and bars for his shop, and he still had to improve every single day. During the last 2 weeks, he started to purify his first few grade 2 ores and it worked better than estimated. That was until he reached a purity of 90%. After that, it was much more difficult to draw out the small pieces of impurity from the ore because they were in a complex situation or sometimes even enveloped by the ore's mana veins. When that happened, he had to be even more careful, and in most cases, he failed miserably. However, this motivated Jason rather than disappointing him. Working hard, it was one day, when Jason began to ask himself how foreign races ranked their weapons. There was no information provided about this inside the 2 Terragrade manuals that were in his possession, and he couldn't really figure it out without asking someone. But who could he ask such a thing? Someone from a foreign race. That would be suicidal. As such, Jason just told himself that the cultivation ranking was also used to grade weapons. After his fortified soul conjunction was finally completed, Jason was hopeful that his Black Origin flame would finally evolve. However, that didn't seem to be the case, and the only thing that changed was that he and the Black Origin flame were closely tied to each other. Jason could use his black fire affinity much better than before, and his accuracy in determining heat increased by a large margin. Thanks to that, he was able to start mass-producing potions much better because he had to use between 9 to 15 flames at the same temperature and time to accomplish this. To mass-produce potions, one could either use a large cauldron or an oversized, rectangular beaker. He chose to use the latter, which required more flames to be used at once because everything had to be heated equally and not a minuscule fluctuation in its temperature was allowed. Otherwise, the ingredients might deteriorate. One flame could have been enough for that, but the center, where the flame would be situated, would be more heated up than the outer areas. As such, Jason decided to go all in as he wanted to receive the best results. With a huge beaker that was 40 centimeters in length, more than 20 centimeters in width, and almost 20 centimeters in height, he was confident in concocting more than 100 potions at once as long as he didn't do a single mistake. This was also the biggest issue he had at hand. One mistake and everything would be for naught. However, Dahlia told him to practice mass concoction of grade 1 potions at least once before he would start concocting more complex grade 2 potions, because the latter was only slightly more difficult but the ingredients' price was different, by a lot. If Jason had to estimate it, he could mass concoct grade 1 potions one time to have the same costs as concocting 10 more complex low grade 2 potions. The ratio was 1:10 under normal circumstances, and Jason began to ask himself why he shouldn't directly concoct grade 2 potions. he could concoct 10 times a grade 2 potion or mass concocting 1 time when Dahlia explained to him that he not only had to refill his stockpile of grade 1 potions but that he could also vary the difficulty of mass concocting by purifying it more or less. If that was not motivating enough, Dahlia also revealed that he could earn much more from mass-producing high-quality grade 1 potions than a few grade 2 potions. Grade 2 potions were more sensible and she wanted Jason to learn everything one step after another. In the end, he couldn't complain about it because he wanted to mass concoct grade 1 potions either way. As such, he only nodded his head when Dahlia said this. With his fortified soul conjunction, Jason was confident in mass concocting without many issues as he summoned 12 small black flames that had the exact same temperature. However, before he could even start with anything, his body ignited in black flames without warning while his black origin flame was doing nothing at all to initiate such a phenomenon. It was not painful, but Jason was still shocked to see this as he received a transmitted thought from the origin flame. Soul energy. It still wants more soul energy. Do you want to suck me dry? Was the only thing Jason could mumble, visibly uncomfortable that he couldn't increase his soul energy for other purposes. Chapter 329, Demanding Flame by Hydesgrain. Right now, he was unable to start concocting because he was a living torch, which would definitely disrupt his task at hand. As such, he decided to stop everything as he turned around to Dahlia, who looked at him with lifted eyebrows, wondering what he was doing. I doubt that this is your doing. Is something going on with your black origin flame? She asked, trying to analyze the situation without showing that she was nervous that Jason was going to shock her by revealing something again. She hoped that it was nothing special and that Jason would stop shocking her and Shane so often because it started to make them jealous. Furthermore, most things he revealed were rather bad, like the revelation that mankind were ants in the eyes of foreign races and that their planet was considered a small one among an unimaginable number of planets, which caused Dahlia to feel innately averse to Jason's news. Scratching the back of his head, Jason said, apparently this is not the black origin flame's doing and it only tried to tell me that it wants more soul energy. However, it seems that the origin flame can't annex more soul energy and it already established the fortified soul conjunction. Looking at Jason, Dahlia could only sigh as she said, maybe there is something else the black origin flame wants to do with your soul energy. Something else? He asked himself before he entered his soul world once again. Carefully inspecting his origin flame that continued to demand soul energy in a restless manner, Jason couldn't find anything odd when it suddenly transmitted him another thought. Soul energy, mana. He was still astonished that the origin flame could transmit him thoughts, shortly after they established a fortified soul conjunction. However, the second thought about mana was even weirder than the first one in his opinion. Tilting his head, he couldn't help but sigh as he allowed his black origin flame to use 10 soul energy units to its desire. However, what he saw afterwards made him frown deeply because the 10 soul energy units the black origin flame loosened were carefully embedded on 10 different positions in their fortified soul conjunction. They began to glow lightly, and other than that, nothing seemed to have changed. At this moment, he received a call which caused him to leave his soul world to look for who it was. Emily. Why is she calling me? Starting to wonder why Emily was calling him, which never happened before, he just accepted the call. Hello, Emily. Is something wrong with the shop? He just asked, before Emily started to blurt out. No, everything is fine with the shop, but Silas and I heard something from a small group of slave merchants who came into the shop a few minutes ago. We didn't understand everything, but it seems that they were talking about a medicine used to increase one's cultivation temporarily. But that is not everything. As we already assumed, this cultivation medicine is highly addictive. Other than that, they talked about something called Mythic Garden, where they got a certain ingredient to make the addictive cultivation medicine. I don't know what this Mythic Garden is, but the slave merchants were adamant about hiring people to go there again. That's already everything. The Golden Soul shop is doing extremely well too. I'm not sure if this information was useful, but we now know that the rumor about addictive medicine is true. Isn't that great? Jason could already imagine that Emily was smiling proudly right now, which caused him to feel weird. The news he heard was not really great and a huge contrast to the enthusiasm Emily showed him. Dahlia, who heard Emily talking, was astonished to hear something overly familiar when Jason mumbled, "Mythic Garden. Never heard of that, but it has to be an important place if that place has the ingredients to produce the cultivation drugs. If it were to be a normal place, mankind would also know more about it. If it's just a garden, maybe foreign races brought seeds or plants to exchange them for something with the Jewel clan. However, that is unlikely to be the case if you or Silas understood the slave merchant's intention to go there, again, correctly. Otherwise, they might as well ask someone to deliver the ingredients to them. Could it be something else? Like a dangerous underground zone or maybe even a rift?" Trying to comprehend what exactly the slave merchant's words indicated, he suddenly heard Dahlia behind him mumbling, "It's a rift." Turning around, Jason exclaimed, "You know the place called Mythic Garden?" However, seeing that Dahlia looked at him in astonishment, asking, "Did I say something?" Jason couldn't help but stare at his master weirdly. "You said that it's a rift when I tried to figure out what the Mythic Garden could be," he said, trying to remain calm, only to see that Dahlia was still looking at him in confusion. "I did." Suddenly she seemed to remember something important as she jumped up from the chair she sat on. "I did. The Mythic Garden is a permanent rift which is hidden by the Jewel clan." Quote. Taken aback by Dahlia's sudden behavior, Jason couldn't help but look at her intently. Emily had already hung up long ago because there were many customers inside the Golden Soul shop she and Silas had to take care of at the moment. This allowed Jason to focus on Dahlia completely without anyone distracting him as she said, "I don't know what's going on, but Shane and I know what the Mythic Garden is, but we can't remember it clearly. When you said that it was a rift, I could suddenly remember something, but now, everything is blurry again. I said that the Mythic Garden is a rift, governed by the Jewel clan, right?" Jason just nodded his head, still not able to fully comprehend what was going on when Dahlia said, "Shane read something about the Mythic Garden. It is described as the land of the cursed and blessed, which is why we wanted to figure out more about it. Other than that, I can't really say more. Shane was inside the rift once according to his blurry memories, but he was young at that time. I don't think that I was inside the rift, probably." Looking at Dahlia, who was not sure what else she remembered, as Jason said, "My memories are still clear, so there can't be something wrong with the name alone. Curses are said to be versatile, and if the description of the Mythic Garden is already so unique with cursed and blessed in it, there might as well be a curse preventing someone from remembering things about the Mythic Garden." Dahlia's eyes widened when she heard how Jason comprehended Shane and her issue when she remembered that this was the same they comprehended when they were younger. She was just unable to recall it before, as she exclaimed, "That's it. The Mythic Garden should have a curse, blurring out memories about its existence and what happened inside, but that would mean that I was also inside. I don't even have blurry memories about being inside the Mythic Garden, yet I can't remember anything about it." Shrugging his shoulders, Jason was not some godly figure who knew everything, as he said, "Maybe you were close to the rift and it's the rift's curse. Either way." However, before Jason could say anything else, he felt extremely weak as his whole body was drained of mana as he mumbled, "What is going on?" Suddenly he heard the Black Origin transmitting him the thought, "mana," several times in succession, which led him to enter his soul world, where he saw that his mana was transported to the Black Origin flame through their newly established fortified conjunction. "What are you doing?" Chapter 330, Greed by Hydesgrain. "What are you doing?" Jason hurriedly transmitting to the Black Origin flame. However, it only answered with the same 3 words it transmitted to him before. "Soul energy, mana." This was not really helpful, and Jason couldn't help but sit down on the chair nearby him because his complete mana was drained. To find out what the Black Origin Flame was doing, he entered his soul world where Jason saw their fortified soul conjunction. Intently staring at the fortified soul conjunction, Jason's eyes widened when he perceived that the faintly glowing 10 soul energy units around became dimmer. However, that was not the astonishing part, because he could see his mana flowing through the fortified soul conjunction towards the Black Origin Flame that absorbed everything greedily. What? Or why is it doing that? The question about what could be answered without any issue, because the Black Origin Flame seemed to have established a unique type of fortified soul conjunction that could transfer his mana to it as long as the fortified soul conjunction was empowered by soul energy. Yet, Jason was unable to figure out the answer to his last question as he approached the center of his soul world, where he found the Black Origin Flame flickering vigorously below the soul world core. He calmed down upon seeing this and decided to look at everything level-headed. Otherwise, he might make a mistake, even if Jason was not sure what exactly he could do wrong right now. Nevertheless, he felt that it was better to be careful right now. Seizing up the Black Origin Flame, nothing about its appearance seemed to have changed, which was what Jason imagined to happen. Rather than that, his eyes widened when he saw that the small mana pool it had deep within the flame was slowly transforming. To achieve that, it used Jason's mana he got drawn out. What is going on? Taking another step closer, Jason was only a few steps away from the Black Origin Flame as his mana eyes inspected every little detail. It does resemble a mana core, right? He asked himself, thinking that his assumption was right. Staring at the Black Origin Flame in curiosity, Jason couldn't help but ask, "Little fella, are you constructing a mana core with my mana?" Unfortunately, the Black Origin Flame couldn't answer him directly and transmitted him the word mana several times in succession as a means to answer him in a different way. It was definitely not bad that it wanted to construct a mana core, but Jason knew that his replenishing speed was slower than what the fortified soul conjunction drew out of him. This was not great at all. Running around while one's mana was drained could be considered extremely exhausting. Jason was already feeling tired without mana because he never really took a long break. His schedule was filled with things he had to do. As such, he relied on the energizing feeling of his mana, which was currently not there. Turning his attention to the fortified soul conjunction, he started to try out a few things to see if he could adjust the pace the fortified soul conjunction could draw out his mana. In the next 20 minutes, Jason tested almost everything to accomplish this feat, only to notice that the answer was extremely easy to find. After he drew 5 out of 10 soul energy units from the fortified soul conjunction away, Jason perceived that the transfer speed decelerated by a larger margin. Once that happened, he sighed in relief before he started to adjust the pace his mana was drawn out further. If his replenishing speed was slightly higher than the amount of mana the fortified soul conjunction would draw out, Jason wouldn't be harmed in any way. Additionally, the Black Origin Flame could construct its mana core without any issue. It would take a long time, but time that was not something Jason lacked right now. Immediately after he finished adjusting everything, he senses the Black Origin Flame transmitting to him the thought, mana, several times. Even if it was annoying, Jason tried to ignore it in the beginning until he decided to threaten his third soul bond with a simple, yet impactful sentence. "If you continue to behave like this, I'm not gonna give you a single soul energy unit or any mana ever again." After that, the Black Origin Flame quieted down in an instant. Thus, Jason left the soul world after he was done, only to see that the black flames around him dissipated. However, the chair below him was smoking, which caused Jason to jump up before he used his ice affinity to cool down the chair again. Staring at Dahlia apologetically, she only sighed before asking, "What was going on?" Smiling dryly, he answered with a particular gleaming in his eyes, with which Dahlia was already familiar. The fortified soul conjunction between me and the Black Origin Flame is able to transfer mana to it by using soul energy as a means to empower the transfer. With the mana it receives, the Black Origin Flame constructs a mana core. Fascinating, right? Jason grinned after he explained what was going on when he heard Dahlia shaking her head. I don't know whether I should be shocked about anything you're saying ever again, or not. Tilting his head in confusion, he was unsure what exactly his master meant when he recalled that almost everything he said to his masters has been shocking. It was not always positive and in his opinion rather disadvantageous for mankind or his masters. At least in most cases. After he remembered all the scenarios where he shocked his masters, Jason couldn't help but feel that Dahlia's reaction was genuine. Jason wouldn't be able to be shocked all the time too, and one would grow accustomed to that faster than one might think. Were you able to take care of your small mana shortage issue? Did you have to adjust something about the fortified soul conjunction, or was it the Black Origin Flame that is in control of the mana transfer pace? Even if Dahlia was not that shocked about Jason's revelations anymore, she was still curious and asked him how he got the hang of his problem. She was still hopeful to establish a fortified soul conjunction with her Silver Origin Flame too someday in the future, and once that happened, Dahlia would be prepared thanks to her disciple explaining everything in a detailed manner. It was unknown when or if she was able to reach such a possibility in her future, but Dahlia thought that there was still a ray of hope left for her. She could clearly feel that her origin flame was trying to do something for a few decades and it was just lacking something particular. After Jason finished his explanation, he turned back to the large beaker that was still standing there, undamaged, before he made a few tests with his flame's affinity. There didn't seem to be an issue and Jason stretched his body that was slowly replenishing the used-up mana. Actively absorbing mana in addition to the passive mana gathering technique in his sub-area, his mana core was filled in a matter of a few minutes. Standing in front of the large beaker, he summoned 12 small black flames with the exact same temperature before he instructed them to float below the beaker to heat the water inside. Taking out the ingredients required to mass concoct the desired peak grade 1 potions he had in mind, Jason smiled lightly before he began the concocting procedure.